Badger fans, we got an amazing guest. Let's talk signing day superlatives, class MVP, best film. We are going to get into it all today's Locked On Badgers with a fantastic guest. Let's go.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Badger fans? Welcome to Locked On Badgers, your team every single day. I'm your host, Ryan Harris, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. New bets, new $5 bets if you win, it gets $150 in bonus bets guaranteed over at FanDuel.com. Go check them out. Do it responsibly over at FanDuel.com. Again, thank you so much for tuning in. We are doing signing day superlatives today. And y'all know, like I always get excited when we get our boy Nick Osen in, the recruiting guru, joining us today. We've been planning this for a while, excited for it. I just kind of want to start here, man. I got superlatives, but I want to shotgun you with a question. What is signing day like for you? Like you put the entire year's culmination of effort into this. The amount of content you do is incredible. The players you see. Like, what is this feeling like for you?
Ryan, thank you so much, man. We have been looking forward to this. And so what I would say is this year was a little bit different in terms of even more extreme. Because basically what happened, and it's a bit of an anomaly, right? But Badgers basketball obviously had a game late last night. So what I kind of did is I took care of that game. I went to bed for an hour from about 12:45 to 1:45. Woke up by 2, and I had, I think, 24 stories pre-written, just speaking with all these guys, you know, getting out to games, little scouting thoughts. I think I spoke with 8 coaches to get some of their quotes. And so when most people woke up by 5:30 or 6, they had all of those refreshers. There was like, you know, maybe one story I didn't publish right away. I think Zy Davis, just because he was maybe thinking about Duke late, obviously ends up a Badger. And so I tried to get that stuff out early. And then kind of my tradition, Ryan, is, you know, this is, I think, my 4th signing day. I try to go see a commit, go to their ceremony and, you know, kind of show some love, really blow that up. And it was an easy pick for me this year because a lot of the Wisconsin kids I've been able to see already recently. So I went to see Jalen Williams in Chicago, and that was really exciting. We got to do a little video. So that's kind of what it looked like. And then we got some availability, of course, with Coach Fickle and some of the top leaders in the recruiting department, of course, as well, Max and Pat, which was awesome. But just in terms of kind of the general part of your question, man, honestly, it feels a little bit like, you know me well enough. I'm not just in this for the football. Like, I love building relationships. And, you know, I'm talking with parents and wishing them luck and congratulations. And it's kind of like you're kind of closing a chapter yourself of your career, right? Mm-hmm. Because then it's like, okay, the next time you see these guys, unless you run into them, you know, at a basketball game or something, like they're probably going to be Badgers. And so now we kind of shift our thoughts, and I'm scheduling interviews of 26 recruits for tomorrow, you know? So it's a little bit of like shutting the book, maybe not fully closing it, but certainly turning the pages. But overall, man, it's a top 5 day of the year for me.
That's phenomenal, man. Let's get into our superlatives. That's what we're going to do today. We kind of got a combined list. I'm just going to do the first one. We'll go back and forth on who they are and how we lead up the questions. Mm-hmm. Class MVP. However you'd want to define that, class MVP.
So I want to start with just mentioning I tried to do it because it is a pretty big class and a good class where I tried not to do repeats, even if somebody, and this is a perfect example, right? Because we've got a question like NFL upside, we got MVP, and that could easily be the same person. So I tried to do different ones. I just want to mention that. MVP, maybe an easy pick. I went with Mason Posa. Obviously a huge recruiting win. He's the highest ranked player. I can tell you myself, seeing him in person, he's a legit 4-star. I think we probably should have him ranked a little bit higher. I think he's like 15th, 16th best linebacker on our rankings. I've got him at, I think, 9th or 10th at least because he's very versatile too, even though he's going to play the inside. And then my kind of honorable mention, because this player had to be somewhere, and I think if he is the MVP, this class could really, really elevate, potentially Carter Smith. Posta was my pick, but that was kind of my honorable mention.
By the way, you and I are like spirit animals. Like when I was doing my list, I have like my guy, and then I have honorable mention and like 2nd, 3rd, 4th. Like, yes, I love it. And I did the same thing where I tried not to repeat because I think this class is deep enough where we want to talk about more people. Class MVP, I went Carter Smith. just listen, at some point he's just a quarterback thing, right? And the quarterback is the most important piece. It's the biggest chess piece. And you're talking about a 4-star, one of the highest quarterbacks we've ever signed into this program. He comes, everything about his film I love. I love the fact that he's out there leading the sweep. Like you want a quarterback who people are going to follow, right? You need a general on the battlefield who's going to lead the charge, essentially. That's got to be the quarterback. Every great team has a leader at that spot, and he checks those boxes to me. I love the multi-sport background. Yeah, I went Carter Smith MVP, but my honorable mention was Jalen Williams, actually, which I'm going to get into. He's a first spot for me, but that was my honorable mention. Let's go most upside. I'll lead this one off. I did Nicholas Clayton. I went Clayton with most upside. Listen, there's just not a lot of guys that come off the edge with his frame, his ability to cover space. The wingspan's incredible. You can see the read and reaction on film. Just unbelievably athletic edge presence coming out of Florida, 4-star kid. And he's also got some coaching, man. Like you can see he understands how to rush the passer. He's skinny. He'll use his hands. He'll jab inside and then get to the outside with a rip move. Most upside, Nicholas Clayton for me.
So if you couldn't see, or if people are just listening to this later, maybe not watching, what have you, I kind of smacked my hands together, man. We're so similar. That was exactly where my mind went. So I think we wrote one defense, one offense. So my mind went to Clayton, and I want to say and give credit to our friend Justin. This is somebody our whole, kind of little friend group was high on since the spring. And I'm glad to see whether it's 247 or Rivals or everybody kind of coming together. This kid's a 4-star, and he is up there now. Offensively, I went with somebody I've had the pleasure of seeing multiple times live and getting to know him a little bit. Nazai Davis. I think he could also fit in another category that we'll touch on. He might need some time. His coach told me that he'll need some time in the weight room, get adjusted to the college game, understandably. But when I watch how he moves and the ball skills and the basketball background, I'm excited about him. And then if I could just add one player, not, like I just gave you my picks, but that wouldn't shock me at all based on his measurements, being healthy, some of his film, and just the way he kind of operates. Luke Emmerich. Don't be surprised if he's that guy.
I got him in a different spot. I love that pick. I absolutely love that pick. I'll give you my offensive one that I had run down, and then I'll move on to the next one. I know Davenport. Again, trying to switch up different spots and use different players. You're talking about an athletic tackle with length. Some of the testing he's done at certain camps, his short area agility drills, they're top of the chart. He moves incredibly well for an offensive tackle with his length. I think if he hits, he's got a massive upside as a pass protecting type of tackle. Let's go underrated next.
Oh, I was okay. Yep. You start this one.
Okay. I'm going. So this was a really difficult one for me. So I'm going to have my guy and then an honorable mention, but we'll just do our top guys first.
Okay.
I want Samuel Leteju, just kind of based on ranking, based on industry standards. I had the absolute pleasure of talking to him. This is a kid who's living with, we both know Coach Sykes out there. He was living with him for a while. Younger player in terms of football development, right? Came over from a different country. He's only been playing football for a little bit and immediately picked it up. Big frame, big wingspan, athletic background. I think he could develop into an absolute menace off the edge. I'm shocked he's not rated a little higher. I know the staff absolutely loves him. I'm going Samuel Leteju, most underrated nationally.
Yeah, they're excited about Samuel. So I'm going to go with, if we would have done this show a week or two ago, right, I would have gone with one of my favorite guys. I've been able to see him a bunch, Jamari Washington. He's still not quite a 4-star, but we did give him a little bump recently. And I want to say he's a 4-star on another site too. So my actual answer now, and I know this has come up on the show, Xavier Ponu.
Yep.
I think that, I'm not sure if there are just too many players in Texas. I mean, our company, they do a great job, but I'm still surprised his ranking hasn't moved at all. And so I'm looking into that a little bit before January. But he's just, physically, I think for the most part, he's there. Motor, I think he's absolutely there. He's a good run stopper. He was telling me about some of his numbers, really good. So underrated nationally, I think he's a mid 3-star on 247 right now. He's better than that, Ryan. He's better than that.
I love that. That's literally the guy I wrote down honorable mention. I think he gets dinged because people don't see him as he's not going to be a tremendous pass rusher. And he's just not going to be that, but he's going to be good there, I think. But he's so solid. I think he's going to get you. This is what I said the other day. He's the type of defensive tackle that gets you into 3rd and 12. He's the type of defensive tackle that gets you into 2nd and 9 because teams can't run on him. I agree. Completely agree. We're going to take one quick second here. Come back. We have a bunch more coming up on superlatives. We got best film, the guy that unfortunately got away. We got best athlete, a bunch more coming up with Nick Osen from 247. We have to take a quick second for our friends of the show, but we are going to come back and get into a bunch more content on Locked On Badgers. Today's episode brought to you by our good friends of the show over at FanDuel. FanDuel remains the #1 source for all your sports betting needs, whatever you need over there on FanDuel. Again, futures, parlays, spreads, teasers. It's all over the FanDuel. As always, do it responsibly, but a great spot to get all your latest sportsbook needs, the official sportsbook of the NFL, of the Locked On Podcast Network, and a great time for it. College basketball is going on, and Great Guard's kind of built a bit of a mini wagon here. If you want to get on that bandwagon, it's a great time to do it. NFL playoffs coming up, NBA is going on, and new time FanDuel users, you get that $5 bonus bet, and you get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed if you win this over at FanDuel.com. Again, do it responsibly, but spice up your weekend over at FanDuel.com. All right, let's jump back into this with the great Nick Osen. And I know we kind of touched on a little bit, Nick, but where can people find your work?
Thank you so much, Ryan. So I share, 95, 98% of my stuff on Twitter at the real Nick Osen, which you kindly have under my name there. And then Badger 247 under 247sports.com, part of CBS Sports. You can see stuff every day, fresh content every day, and a lot more recruiting things coming.
Let's do this. Best film.
So here's one where I took very literally, right? I've been fortunate. I think I've seen about half this class in person over 5 or 6 states. So I didn't allow myself film. I just said best I've seen live.
Love it.
And I was torn between two. I'm not sure if you'll have either of these. Cooper Catalano, because I think that, with some of the names and out-of-state guys, he maybe doesn't get talked about as much. And again, I've seen him many times. Tackling machine, but I think that undersells a little bit. He got faster this year. He's very strong. He can diagnose well. So I had Catalano, and then somebody we were all talking about in the friends group a little bit recently, Eugene Hilton Jr. There were times, he would tell you himself he could have had another catch here or here, but if there was an on-target throw at times, I think there was one game he could have had 4 or 5 scores that I was at. Just a polished player, clean, good route runner, great size, pretty good separation. Big fan of those two, Ryan.
Let me ask you this, because I'm fascinated by you. You've been able to see a lot of these players in person. I haven't. There's things you can get, and you know this, from seeing someone in person that you just can't get off film. How does Eugene Hilton Jr. carry himself? Like, what about the demeanor, the way he plays, the physicality? Like, what's different seeing him in person?
Yeah. So I think when you watch him come up to the line, he's trying to take your soul. I think he goes into it with that very strong, competitive mentality. He knows how good he is, but I think he also knows there's still more levels to get to. And then I've just been impressed, man. There were some tough games for his team that I was at, even if he played well. Really good at just being a leader, bringing guys up. Like, I think I'm not surprised by that, knowing obviously the T.Y. Hilton side, but T.Y. Hilton is also a coach with this team. And I've just been really impressed with, how everybody handles themselves within that program. So I would say those are some things you can see, Ryan. And then just like physicality, like when I saw him, or again, Catalano, Mason Posa, like these guys have a little bit more size and kind of a wingspan, maybe height than I expected when I saw them in person.
I love it. I'm going Mason Posa for my favorite film that I've seen. It reminded me a little bit of it. The high school film Attack at Curtis was similar in a way, where he was just so clearly so much more athletic and powerful than any single person on the football field. Like the closing speed that Mason Posa has, the fact that he's lining up everywhere on the field. You've hit on this covering Posa. He'll be in the deep center field, and then he'll be coming off the edge, and he'll be playing in the middle. Then he'll be blowing up a play sideline to sideline.
Mm-hmm.
Just incredible versatility. His film's awesome. Like, if you're just a fan of watching fun football high school films, go check out Mason Posa, because it's just a collection of incredible highlight clips. So I went Posa on that one, but yeah, like he's incredible.
You will get no disagreements, man. I don't think from anybody. I feel like if you're just going straight film highlights, I think a guy like Posa, Clayton, and low key, maybe you're going to use him in a different one, and that's my fault. But I wasn't gonna. Cairo Skanes has some nice tape.
Yes. So
Yeah,
I wasn't,
he's an
but
intercepting machine.
Yeah, so I wasn't, but he's a really interesting guy because, one thing, and just, I guess we're getting a little off track here, but we won't get too far off track, I promise. Every DB in this room, they all tackle. Every single defensive back they brought in, every single one of them lays the wood, comes up, tackles, is physical. It's really interesting to me. I don't know if you saw that either, or if that's just me.
No, it's not just you, man. I'm smiling because I know you've been traveling too. You got to check out some of the stories from today. But I had some coach quotes, and one of my guys, Jareem Fleming at Morgan Park with Jamari Washington, talked about how his physicality and wanting to tackle really stand out. So, like what you're putting down there, my man.
Let's get to the next one. The one that got away, and you and I were talking a little before the show. There's a lot here. I'll kick this one off. To me, it was Gentry. I think I could have gone Gentry or Stroud, Raheem Stroud or Zay Gentry, the two corners. To me, this class, I like Skanes, I like Washington, I like Scott. I really like this group of DBs coming in. But the one thing I think they're kind of missing is that deep speed boundary guy. That guy who could just kind of glide, who's a little more of a pure 4-4-ish guy, 4-4-5 guy. They got guys that can move. Absolutely. They got size, they got physicality. I think they really wanted another guy out there who could really turn and run and play a little bit more of that man press. And I think that would have been Gentry or Stroud if they were able to kind of land those guys.
Yeah, and no shot, obviously, at any of these guys. I feel like from what I have seen and, kind of hearing around the network a little bit through 247, I'm not sure Stroud necessarily had the frame and kind of the, not weight, but maybe strength you might need because I believe he was on the light side, but he absolutely skilled, absolutely fast. Gentry would have been nice to have, obviously, and I think he's a really good player. This one was a little tough for me because I feel like if you, like you just mentioned, a corner, okay, but they got Washington and Skanes, and I think you could like go on kind of different ways. I think like not kind of keeping Cam Miller, like I feel like okay, maybe a second receiver, but just because I know about this kid's film and I know how close he was actually with a lot of the commits from speaking with them, and just kind of what he was about. I put Brendan Haynes, but I think that the staff did a phenomenal job. I mean, who knows if, like, I would think there would have been room for a Jalen Williams type of guy, but, obviously, what do? They pivot. And I think that's a very good thing. I think you could argue linebackers, like, maybe the deepest kind of spot within this class, that or O-line. So, not like a worry point or anything, but for the sake of this exercise, his film and just I feel like that was the only school he really would have left to, quite honestly.
Yeah, his film was awesome. Like just really, really explosive short area quickness. The type of guy who would shut down a lot of those intermediate passing type of concepts that teams run, getting out to smoke screens, little receiver stuff. Like he's really good. And that's a great get for Tennessee. Like I would have loved to have Haynes in this class. I think it's a really good one.
I'll add real quick, look, Clayton, pass rushing, I would take probably higher than Haynes. Certainly the same level, probably higher though. I mean, man, great job from I just want to say from Matt Mitchell and Max Steinecker, Pat Lambert, and the staff, because Clayton's a dude. Let me just say that. I don't think either of us would be shocked if he's a day 2 NFL guy.
Let me ask you this. The majority of these guys are plan A, right? You look at the staff and you look at these guys, it's plan A guys, especially on defense, offensive line. Hilton was a plan A guy. Most of the offensive line were plan A guys. Davis was a plan A guy. Carter Stewart would have been a plan A guy. Jalen Williams was committed to Michigan, came back. I think he just got to feel good.
Scott. I don't know if you said him. But
Washington. I mean, Remington Moss was an early get. Like you just go down. This is all outside of a few guys. Skanes was a little late. Obviously, there's a couple, but Emmett Bork. But for the most part, they got the guys they wanted. They got the guys they targeted early. Now you got to feel good about that. I mean, that's kind of a tangent, but you got to feel good about that if you're a Badger fan.
100%, and that's why, like, I think it's really good to reflect and think about who else was in the fold or could have been type of thing. But that's why, when you talk about one that got away, I feel like overall, I actually tweeted it right before I shared your show, my guy. I think that the depth and versatility in this class is really nice, right? We'll see if it has kind of the high-end star power that we think 2024 has or will have. But like I can't say enough about. I just feel like on the O line, linebacker, DBs, like the versatility that these guys are bringing on top of the athleticism, major plus.
And I just want to make one quick correction to you. Whenever you're on the show, it's our show. It's not my show whenever you're here, man. I'm super curious for the take on this one.
Mm-hmm.
The most likely guy to run through a wall if it means getting a win in this class.
Yeah. So I think this is awesome, man. This might have been my favorite. I probably would have had this answer recently. And after speaking with all the guys, to get kind of the signing day interviews, this was easy for me. He's a very nice guy, like down to earth, polite, always down for interviews, but he's nasty in the trenches. And I am going with Mr. Hardy Watts.
Oh, that's
he was telling me he will go the extra mile for this program. Some great quotes. That's my pick for this one.
Dude, absolutely love it. That's who I wrote down as well. Hardy Watts. Everything you hear about him, nasty, tough. Agree. Very, very well-spoken kid. Hardy Watts is absolutely there. Another guy, and I already used him, but Carter Smith fits into this mold for me as well. Because you just don't see quarterbacks leading the way on sweeps and decleating defensive backs. He comes from a great pedigree, multi-sport athlete. Baseball players are kind of gritty. They're kind of grinders anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So he was the other one I wrote down, but Hardy Watts is exactly who I had first on this list.
That's actually amazing. Let me tee you up for this one, because if we have the same on this, we might have just been separated at birth type of thing, because there were so many choices. Best athlete.
I went Luke Emmerich.
Okay.
So there's a couple you can go here. There's absolutely, and there's a couple I might have gone here. Like I would have potentially gone Posa if I hadn't already used them, just because the wrestling background, the athleticism, that size. I thought Jalen Williams is interesting, just that size and movement skills. But Emmerich, you look at him, right, and obviously he had the injury. It kind of set him back. I think it kind of kept him under the national radar. But now you're talking a guy running 10.8s, 10.7s. I mean, Emmerich can absolutely fly. That might be the fastest guy in this class. And he's got size, and he's really, really tough. Like, he brings a lot of physicality to the point of impact. So I went Emmerich just for the speed, but I also just love he's not fast at 5'8", right? He's fast and he's bringing a thump. So I went Emmerich on this one.
Dude, that's an awesome description, quite honestly. And I was speaking with him again, and he brought up how, it was a little tongue-in-cheek. Like, he's one of the funniest kids in this class. Just some of the quotes he has. But he was talking about how he can't wait to get in the weight room, like get stronger, same as like Coop Catalano, Eugene Hilton. Like, a lot of these guys are saying that. And he had just said a funny quote. He said, I want to go back home and have the family not even recognize me. I've gotten so strong, So that's a great pick. I actually was between putting him there or honorable mention upside. Best athlete, a bit of a cop-out. I have two. Jalen Williams, I'm not sure I would have had him if I hadn't seen him just this week, but I didn't realize, I think he's a little bit taller in person. Wingspan is crazy good, man. And he's slimmed down a little bit, which I think is probably going to be a good fit. He's doing track and field coming up. And then obviously, as we've reported and talked about, he's getting looked at outside linebacker now with the Badgers, not necessarily DL, and certainly not just a down lineman. So I think that makes a lot of sense. I've seen what he can do on the field, explosiveness, like I mentioned. Wingspan for him, it's all about putting it together, and he knows that. I think Mitchell will do some great things with him. The other guy I had to say, Grant Dean. I think he got lost in the shuffle a little bit because he was an early commit in the spring, and, an in-state guy, maybe didn't have some of the huge offers. I can tell you firsthand, I saw him live a couple weeks ago. We hung out that night, actually. Yep. It was Penn State weekend. And I mentioned to our guys, Alan True and some of the 247 guys, like, hey, this guy might be a 4-star. And obviously he got a really nice bump. I think he was like a point off. I think he's an 89. He's not just a safety, Ryan. He's not just a football player. Like, that guy could be a D1 running back. So those, I think, were my two picks in a very athletic class.
Yeah, I love it. Let's go. Next one we had. This is an interesting topic. So who's the most likely guy to redshirt, maybe need another year or two of development, and then as a redshirt junior, he explodes onto the scene? Who did you put for that?
So I think this was a little bit of an easier pick for me, just because He's told me how he wants to get developed, and I'm sure you know who I'm going to say. He's newer to the game of football. So I went with Torrin Petaway. I understand that they need bodies along the defensive line, and we'll see how things shake out in the portal and with some of the young guys. And obviously, maybe things click. He's enrolling early. I mean, I think the world of his ability, and our readers know that. But I just felt like in terms of getting developed, getting more of the technique, and then using that body and that athleticism long term, that was my pick here. Who knows if he redshirts, right? But just in terms of getting developed, taking the time, the process that the staff has no issue with, and then really making an impact later on, Ryan.
Yeah, I love the thought process there. I went same thought process, flipped it to the other side. I went Big Mike. I went Mike Roski there. Because this is a guy it's very similar in a lot of ways to your description of Torrin Petaway, playing at a level that the level of competition is going to get higher. He's always kind of one of the bigger, more physically imposing guys. But with Roski, too, you're talking about a guy who's coming off an injury. He missed quite a bit of development time with an injury, came back. So he got set back a little bit there. The technique's it needs work, but he's just a mountain of a man. He's a huge physical specimen. He looks like the type of guy you put him in the weight room for a couple of years. You redshirt him as a redshirt junior. He kind of looks like that 6'6", 6'7", 320-pound guard, or right tackle that's just going to come down and bury a defensive lineman. I like him a lot. I like that, and I also just like talking to him. He wants to hurt people in all the right ways of an offensive lineman. Right? He wants to dominate. Like, I just love the mentality there, and I think he's got the size to back it up. So I went with Roski there. But
that's a great pick. I saw him at camp, and obviously now he's like 100% and was able to play out his senior season and things. So I get where you're coming from, and he certainly shouldn't probably be rushed in that spot either, which makes sense. I think physically, Ryan, he's maybe a little bit more ready than I expected.
Yeah, I think it's fair. All right, last one here, I think, on our list. And then I do want to – we got a couple questions here I want to tee up to you if we have just a minute. And I know I want to be very gracious with your time. I know you've been grinding. But the last one we had on our superlatives before the show was who's the bleeding Badger guy, the guy who is the ultimate Badger, embodies the culture of what this team wants to be. Who is that guy for you in this class?
So this was one of my little picks, and I went with Big Mike Lorosky, man. I mean, just speaking with this young man now for well over a year, right? Since I moved back, I want to say he was one of the first recruits I spoke with. I felt good about him ending up as a Badger. He got close with Catalano. He goes to Grant Dean's games. At times he's very supportive on social media when he has the time. You talked about that mentality, and it was kind of cool. I think it's getting windy here in Madison, Ryan, but I think it was his mom or somebody in his family showed, a little picture of him this week, like the young Badger fan growing up, and now he's a Badger. I mean, that stuff is still cool, man. Even in this changing world of college football, portal, NIL, like, he's about the right stuff. And I think that is why he'd be my pick for that bleeding Badger.
I love it. I would easily on there. I went with Cooper Catalano for much of the same reasons, right? I was able to have both of those guys on the show. Love talking about them. You can tell how excited they are to be Badgers. There's nothing wrong with making business decisions in college sports now. A lot of players do it. Some players are coming to the Badgers or other places to make business decisions, but those two are coming, and they're not the only ones in this class doing this, by the way. But those two are coming also because they want to be Badgers. Like, they want to represent the home state. They care about that culture. So. I went Coop. I think both of those are great answers. Let me throw this to you because we had several people kind of mention this, and this has been an ongoing conversation. So I just kind of want to get your quick 2 cents on this, but it's essentially
we got a couple minutes.
It's essentially why are we going to? I'm trying to find the right quote that I start here. I don't have it start, but I'll just say it. People are asking, why do we care about recruiting when these guys are going to leave anyway? A little hyperbole, I get it, but with the way college football is now, a lot of questions about why get excited about recruits coming in when maybe they're just in a year or two leaving in the portal anyway?
That's a phenomenal question. And it's a tough one because obviously it's so much of my role is recruiting. And I mentioned I'm a relationships guy. So, sometimes those can be split and broken off a little too early. I'm going to say that you should still care. And it's such a positive for 2 reasons. One, I mean, I finally get a few minutes tonight, right? I'm watching some of these other coaching press conferences, of course, including Coach Fickell, Max Steinecker, Pat Lambert here at Wisconsin. Whether the guys stay for 6 months, a year, or 6 years, the idea of this program and the true successful college football programs right now are still to build through high school football. I promise you. Look at even Oregon right now that has all the money in the world. They get a couple big guys from the portal, but like they're still doing what they can right now to get guys in the high school levels. I heard Marcus Freeman say something like that on our 247 show. Coach Fickell and especially Max talked about it like today in Madison. So I think one, it's kind of still the basis, whether the guys stay or not. And two, I know as a fact, these guys here in Madison, they want to still have the opportunity to get guys in that they believe in character-wise, physically, and be able to develop them. Like I asked Coach Fickell today, a question about Chicago being like a great kind of background and backdrop to go to for recruiting. And he talked about how, like, yes, there's a ton of talent. There's a ton of good football players. Also, it gives you the opportunity to go into these Wisconsin schools or Chicago schools and say, hey, like we think this of, your students, your athletes, we think they may need a year or two to develop. But if you put kind of the faith and trust into us, I mean, I understand, if fans get disappointed about like wins, losses here and there and stuff, like obviously that's the most important thing at times. But I don't think you can doubt much of the development track record that Fickell and this staff had, especially at Cincinnati. And that's something I will go to bat for because I believe in it. And the more these days go by, I fall more in love with recruiting. I was just, telling Vivi that earlier, quite honestly. So I think that whether kids are up for staying or not, okay. I mean, the coaches can't control that. We can't. Media can't, But I think the idea and the fact that more often than not, I mean, how many guys left Wisconsin because they weren't playing? Some get the opportunities. Some you never hear from again. So I still think it's really important, Ryan, but a really good and apropos question as well.
Yeah, and you hit a lot of what I think I would have probably said as well. The last part I would probably add to that, and this is just kind of my take, and you and I have walked different paths in life, so we have different perspectives, different ages. But I also just think I'm a very much move forward kind of guy, right? Like stuff happens, move forward. Something happens, move forward. Like a couple players leave. What's the alternative? Stop recruiting good players? Oh, that's not going to work. Like you keep adding talent to the pipeline so that when 10% of them leave, your other 90% is still talented. The alternative, just because we lost a couple kids. And by the way, this isn't a Wisconsin thing. This is the other thing I keep saying. This is a college football thing. Last year, Alabama lost their starting safety to Ohio State. Alabama. Like this is not just a Wisconsin thing. Nebraska's got 12 people in the portal right now. But the alternative is you don't stop recruiting good talent because that's the best way to get the people that you want to retain. And you can focus on players leaving. And we're going to do a show probably tomorrow, do a show on all the DBs that left in the 23 class. That matters. Don't ignore that. But also don't ignore the fact that next year you're going to have a Kevin Haywood from that 24 class. Like I don't want to speak for anything, but I don't think he's going anywhere. You're going to have a Thomas Heiberger again. I don't want to speak for anything, but I don't think he's going anywhere. So focus on what's still in house from those recruiting classes instead of the couple that have left would be kind of my take on that. But I get the question. It is harder sometimes to follow recruiting when you think you may not have those relationships to cheer for those players as they develop. I do get that.
Yeah. I mean, it's still something, whether we're talking about recruiting or just the state of college football, like it's a fair question. And it can be harder to really kind of get emotionally attached, which is, tough for fans. And I don't blame them at all. But where I'm at, I kind of have this nice juxtaposition of, I admit I'm, a connector, relationship type of guy, but sometimes, like you said, you just got to move forward, roll with the punches. All right, let's talk to these targets this weekend, see what's, popping for the next class. You know what I mean?
I love it. He is Nick Osen. I could keep him for hours. I mean, I could have a bunch more questions, but that's why we do more shows. We'll do more shows in the future as well. Go check out his great work over at 247. Follow him on Twitter, which is down there on the show notes. Nick, thank you as always, my friend. Thank you, everybody tuning in, whoever's going to watch this. Really, really do it. As always, appreciate you. Go check out Locked On Big Ten. We're done here. Get all the latest conference news over on the Big Ten channel on Wisconsin, and we will talk later.